Welcome to the Communicate with Confidence podcast, the podcast that aims to take the fear out of communicating. I'm your host, Amanda Jane, originally from the north of Ireland and now living in beautiful Cheshire, England. Did you know your potential is reflected in how you communicate? There are many scenarios where our communication skills let us down, but they don't truly reflect who we are or what we can actually do. We never get a second chance to make a first impression, so it makes sense to learn as much as we can about this skill that we all need. I am a communication coach and I'm passionate about taking the fear out of communicating. There are many myths around communication and I hope to explore them through this podcast. So stop missing out on opportunities and join me as we communicate with confidence, brought to you by amandajane.co.uk. Hello everyone and welcome to the Communicate with Confidence podcast. And today I have with me Erica Mallery. Hello Erica.
Hello, how are you?
I'm wonderful, thank you. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me here. So excited.
No, it's lovely to have you. And you are a certified life coach and advocate for mindful living. And the reason I wanted you on my podcast today was because you are the guide to losing the hangover and not the booze. And we will talk about that a little bit later. So I love that. So before we get started, we're going to talk about, first of all, do you have a favorite motivational song?
That was a very hard one for me. I love music so much. For me, it's just about like finding a power song. And the one that really came to mind for me is This Girl Is on Fire by Alicia Keys. It's not a newer song, of course, but if I'm not having a great day, if I put that song on, like it just makes me feel on fire, even if just for that moment. So that's kind of my go-to power song.
That is an amazing song. I agree. It is just brilliant. And I think young people love that song as well. I've heard little kids sing it. It is just an absolute power ballad. Couldn't agree more. And do you have
Yes.
a favorite quote?
I have notebooks full of quotes.
Oh,
Oprah is kind of my go-to. I just love Oprah so much, but one of hers that just so hits me every time I read it is you don't become what you want to become, you become what you believe. Yeah, we're so much like, I want this, I want to be this person, but we don't actually necessarily believe that we are that person or could be that person.
yeah.
And so that's just like, do you want it or do you believe you will
Yeah.
become it?
Yeah, that is the key word. Believe. Absolutely. And a favorite book, and this one doesn't have to be motivational.
Oh, have you ever heard of Karen Slaughter?
I have. I haven't read any of her books, but they are on my list, and everyone
Ooh.
raves about her.
Yes, anything Karen Slaughter, they are deep and dark and
Oh,
horrible, but so good. If you like that type thing, like it all into like murder and
oh,
yeah,
psychological
so it's
thrillers. Oh, that's right up my
very psychological
street.
thrillers. And they're always about like women getting like not great things happening to us, but she is so good how she writes. It is just, I'm a big audiobook person.
Me too.
I fly through them.
Uh-huh.
But as far as on the motivational side, anything You Are a Badass by Jen Sincero, she has several different You Are a Badass, and then Atomic Habits definitely changed my life. That is one that if
Really?
anyone wanted to make changes in their life, that is the one book that I'd say read it. You will find something to take away immediately.
I love this. The book list is growing fast.
Just growing.
It really is. And every time one of my guests tells me about their book list, my mind's going, right, get that down. And I go through audiobooks,
Yeah.
like no one's business, but I love it and it goes in. So yeah, spend too much time on audiobooks, but there's no better way to spend your time, is there?
Yeah, my mom's always like, she's a physical reader, and she's like,
Uh-huh.
I don't know how you find time for audiobooks. I'm like, how do you find time to read? Like,
Yeah,
audiobooks I can do while driving,
yeah,
doing laundry, cleaning the house. Like,
yeah,
there's always time for audiobooks.
definitely.
Physical
Yeah,
reading for me is a lot harder.
yeah, you're right. If you're holding a book, you've got to absolutely be in and so and I do both. I like to sit down sometimes with a physical book, but yeah, audio book if you're doing the laundry, whatever, it's nice to have that. And yeah, I will add those books to it. That Atomic Habits has come up a few times as well. And the Karen Slaughter, oh, it's been on my list for such a long time. But thank you for that. Said with such passion and
Yes.
vigor. I love it.
Yes, just warning you, don't don't listen to Karen Slaughter as you're going to bed. It might not be good for your dreams, but
I
besides that,
no,
so good.
I've made that mistake so many times. Oh
Me
yeah,
too.
yeah. Because well, it's usually me listening to the audiobook and my husband snoring away. But so, I know that's brilliant. Thank you. So let's crack on with your leadership journey. So can you share your leadership journey and some key milestones that have shaped your career and what stands out as memorable?
God, that's such a big question. I feel like, especially as young kids, you're almost like pocketed if people see that you have leadership skills. For girls, unfortunately, it's been like if you're bossy. So I think that, me as a little kid, I had two older brothers. I was definitely not a pushover. I would make myself known. So I got bossy for a little bit, did not like that. But as I got older, I realized like there's a big difference between being bossy and having leadership skills. So
Hmm.
really tried to like hone in on that. And for me, leadership is just so big about kind of the person that you are naturally and kind of the difference between being a leader and being a manager. Like
Hmm.
anyone can be a manager. You can be a good manager or a bad
Yeah.
manager, but very few people can really lead. So I think that so much of that is just like, for me, the kind of person that you are. And some of the ones that have really stood out to me, my brother was a senior at Columbine the year that the shooting happened. And
Mm.
shortly after that, I was in middle school. They had asked, I believe it was the teachers that recommended like a group to put together that was basically, we want a group that we can use that's like, essentially showing leadership that we can, us as teachers, go to, but also have the kids go to. There was a person like that wanted to like a book on focusing on young leadership through difficult times. So I was selected for that. And that was kind of a moment where I'm like, oh, okay, like I'm not bossy. I am more of a leader. This is great.
Uh-huh.
But then throughout high school, I got a Gatorade Sportsmanship Award, which for me meant more than anything in the world because I'm just like, wow, sportsmanship to me shows the kind of person that you are.
Yeah.
And coaches from all the different teams voted on it. So that like really stood out to me. And then just throughout college, it was a lot of, I I don't like things not getting done. So I would be like the team lead for a lot of projects just to make sure like everything was being managed and getting done. For jobs, it was interviewing and hiring and mentoring the people that came on. And that really just filled my cup. For me, it's so much about like helping others see
Yeah.
what's inside of them so that they can put their best foot forward. And that's, I think, something that is just come natural to me most of my
Hmm.
life.
That's incredible. And, drawing that difference between being a leader and a manager, having those skills literally to bring people on and guiding them through that journey. You've just simplified it in such an elegant way. That is incredible. And theory of mine, I think it's born from childhood and, your circumstances at the time. And it's a shame that label gets put on young girls, bossy. And I think into adulthood, it becomes another word beginning with B. And,
Yep, sure does.
and well, I personally detest labels, but why can't we if we are going to put a label on it, very organized, demonstrates good leadership, can
Mhm.
bring people along, can manage a project. And if you exhibit those skills when you're very young, it's I just hate the fact that was pegged on at that stage, and
Mhm.
there are no equivalents in any other way, that we peg on girls, but anyway.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, so very, very interesting. And did you have any inspirations or role models along the way?
Oh God, so many. Some of the one of the main ones that stood out for me, I interned for a the Colorado Rockies, their baseball team here, and my manager, he wasn't my direct report, but like he handled kind of the intern team. He was one of the most brilliant leaders I've ever seen. He was, one of the top guys in the company and interacting with professional players all the time. And he would treat the owner to the anyone on his team to us interns to the groundskeepers and people keeping the stadium clean the exact same. It did not matter who you were. He looked you in the eye, he asked how you were doing and actually cared. Like he just showed so much that it's about, again, the kind of person that you are and who you show up to be. You can have the title, but that doesn't determine who you are. It's like,
Yeah.
what's inside. So he was one that I valued him so much and would turn to him after the internship for the first couple of years of my career that I'm just like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, so he became definitely a mentor there, but he was just, for me, like, it doesn't matter how big you get, how high your title is, if you will. All that matters is how you treat others. So,
Exactly. Yeah. I couldn't agree more on that as well. Titles mean nothing, and how you
mhm.
are with other people, regardless of what their role is. It's just about being authentic with people and treating them well. And I personally believe that if you treat people well, they will work well with you. And it's interesting that you were so impressed by him and you noticed those values in him. And I think if you've had that experience, it's just such a brilliant experience for you to have had, and to have had that inspiration in your life. It's incredible. He sounds amazing. You're very lucky.
Yes. Well, and he's a big reason why I know that there's a difference between managers and leaders,
Yeah,
because I saw, because of him, and then plenty of managers I had
the opposite.
thereafter,
Yeah.
that you could be a leader,
Hmm.
but not everyone's manager.
Yeah.
Or I'm sorry, you could be a manager, but
Like,
not
none of
everyone's a
it's,
leader.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And we kind of do need to see it operating in the wrong way to appreciate it
Oh,
operating in the right
absolutely.
way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what about communication? How important do you think it is in leadership? And can you think of any examples of where it went wrong or right?
Oh my God, I feel like leadership is, or communication is everything. It's not only in leadership, but just in relationships. If you look at almost everything that has gone bad in the world, it comes down to miscommunication or lack of communication at some point or another. So I feel like communication, it's, for me, it's always better to over communicate than under communicate. And I will say that going into it, like, sorry if I repeat myself, I just want to make sure I'm over communicating so that there are no gray areas. But I think just a huge part of that is making sure that the communication, everyone feels open and that they are able to express their opinions, their feelings, their thoughts, because that's how things get better. And I think that's one of the hardest things, because sometimes you're having difficult conversations. Sometimes you're putting down someone's idea, their baby that they work so hard on, that you disagree with. But I feel like if you approach it with love and with grace, that you are able to get the best out of everything, um, and the best out of everyone. So I just, as far as communication specifically, when things go well, I think communication is on par. When things don't go well, I think communication is the number one thing to look at.
Mm, definitely. And I think, you mentioned over communication there. If you think about getting a message to wherever, we know that maybe it takes someone 7 times for a message to go in, and we know that we've communicated very clearly to a specific audience, and it's still not gone in. I completely agree. Keeping that message
Mhm.
visible and creating an environment where people are free to ask questions or free to say, oh, I didn't quite get that. And sometimes people's perception of what it is you're saying is skewed as well. So keeping that open and transparent for me is absolutely key. And the reason I wanted to ask you the question is about the work that you do about embracing moderation. And what have we got? Your guide to losing the hangover and not the booze. And I thought that's an interesting message to be communicating. So so tell me about your audience and how you communicate that with them, and what does that look like?
So I am very much the kind of person that the black and white, all or nothing mentality does not work. I've tried pretty much every diet on the planet throughout, my adolescence growing up, and every diet was like, you can do this, you cannot do this. And I noticed that, especially if diet starts Monday, for example, I would be essentially eating everything I possibly could up until Monday because I knew it was off the table. I could never have it again. So fast forward to my adult life, and this changed more to areas like drinking, to where it was like, okay, if you know that you're gonna, dry January is coming up, you're gonna stop drinking. I see so many people that just binge out of their mind because they're like, well, I'm not gonna drink come January 1st. So So that's kind of where this whole thing was birthed from, is when you have that all or nothing mentality going into it, when you're communicating to yourself, like, you can't have this as of tomorrow, your body, your brain is fighting back on that. It's not like, okay, great, like, I'm just going to say goodbye, so it's how can we approach it in the way that you're not making it this like all or nothing thing
Mm.
that you're then craving the second that you can't have it, or that's all you're thinking about. When it's more of a, like, oh, take it or leave it, I can have it, but I don't need the whole thing. It's so much easier to be around it, to consume it, to not consume it, to whatever that looks like for you. So for me, the big part was, how can I still be able to drink, just not to excess, when I do choose to drink. So that's really the biggest thing. And it's definitely interesting because everything out there is basically telling you to stop drinking, or at least stop drinking for a period of time. And again, for me, that was just very triggering. I'm like, that's not going to happen. So, but I also did not feel like I was at a point to where I needed to like never drink again type thing.
Yeah.
So that's really where this whole thing came from, and where the communication goes, as far as not only how you're talking about it with others, but more importantly, how you talk about it to yourself and how you see yourself in it.
Hmm. And I know from my experience, if I said to myself, you're not allowed to have a drink in January, my body would be going, oh, really? And I think I would instantly start to crave whatever it was. And growing up in Ireland as an Irish Catholic, we had Lent. So that was a period of you couldn't eat any sweets, or
Exactly.
you couldn't have any. And I remember as a child, it was a very serious thing. And you could not eat sweets or sugar. So it was kind of part of my culture. So it should come naturally to me. But I've never bought into this dry January thing. And maybe that's because of having to observe that in my
It's
faith.
triggering.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But I can totally see where you're coming from, because psychologically you're telling your brain, right, I'm going to stop this nice thing that I like, and we're not going to have it for a month. But your brain and your body's going to go, well, actually, we want it, so you're going to top up beforehand. And it's also, they do the stop smoking in October. That's it. We do that in the UK. I don't know about the US. And I fully appreciate the sentiment behind it, and I think it is great because it does prompt people to think, oh, I need to change my behaviors. But I wonder if somehow there was a scientific measurement of the amount of alcohol consumed normally versus what was consumed in the week leading up to dry January. So,
Exactly. And it's granted, yeah, it's holidays, it's all of that. But I think that one of the biggest things is it's not triggering for everyone. For some people, they're just like, I'm not going to do it. And okay, fine.
and
That's
it's a
their
nice
personality and it
challenge.
works for
Yeah,
them.
people like to
Yeah,
challenge themselves.
exactly. But for
Hmm.
me and so many others, it's just, I'm not a rebellious person, but you tell me I can't have something or
Yeah.
I can't do something, and that's where I'm like, this is my choice, not yours.
Uh,
But as you had mentioned, there is so much shame around it because
mhm,
of religious reasons, because of upbringing, because of so many different things, that when you, especially if you don't understand that that's going on behind the scenes,
mhm,
you'll get into these shame spirals when you say you're not drinking and then you have a drink, or
mhm,
I'm only going to drink two and then you have three, or whatever
mhm,
that looks like.
mhm,
It is so much harder on women, typically, from what I found, than
mhm.
men, that it's just we get in these shame spirals and it's so
Yeah.
almost impossible to get out of. And
Mhm,
then it's, for me, it's just, if you can stop drinking, awesome. If you feel like that's good for you,
mhm,
awesome. I am so supportive of that.
mhm.
But if that makes you feel like, okay, but I'm going to drink really heavily now so that I can stop drinking, like, to me, that completely defeats the purpose. So that's where
Yeah.
this middle ground stands, so that you can learn not only how to moderate in this area, but in
Mhm.
any other area of your life.
Yeah. And that it's that moderation is key. And then I imagine if you've announced to your nearest and dearest, I'm going to do dry January. And if for some reason you decide that you want to drink, you've got the circle of people going, oh, well, I thought you were going to, and then there's the shame again. You've got people judging you. And
Exactly.
for me, I don't like the word diet. I've never liked it all my life. I've tried to keep it out of my vocabulary, because I know the minute I say to my brain, I'm going on a diet, I'm triggering something in my brain that signifies lack or doing without. So instead, I prefer to say, I'm going to cut down on this, I'm going to cut down on that. And that's how I manage that, because for me personally, it's a psychological thing. But but moderation is, it's the absolute key, I think, to everything. And isn't that what they say? It's, the secret to happiness is moderation in all things. And but it just does seem to be, perpetuating this binge culture.
Mhm.
Stop, binge, stop. But again, if that's, I suppose, maybe if you're thinking of people that are maybe moderate drinkers anyway, and they're stopping, but I can completely understand where you're going. Oh, I better get all this in before the date happens. And it's a really interesting social phenomenon to observe. So, and
Yes.
haven't, and that, but also actually thinking about it, I mentioned Lent earlier. We have Shrove Tuesday or Pancake Tuesday before that, which is a very old tradition of bringing together all the fat and the sugar and the things, and that's the binge, isn't it, before Lent? So it's it's a similar thing.
Exactly. I mean, that's the whole point of Mardi Gras, right?
Yes,
Like, get it
same.
all out right before we start.
Yeah, it's the
Yep.
same kind of thing. Wow, it's so interesting. I hadn't quite thought of it of that. So in social media, then, are you comfortable speaking in public? Are you comfortable doing lives on social media and all of that? How do you get your message across?
I'm definitely comfortable like being on camera or speaking to people just because in my mind, like I just try to focus on if I am talking to one person that this can help, and
Yeah.
that's all that matters to me. I am not a huge fan of social media in general. I mean, just the research behind how bad it is for us mentally and emotionally, and kids as well. It's basically like the same as gambling as far as what it does in our brain. So I try to limit my personal time on there. But it's really hard to grow an audience, grow a business when you're not constantly engaged on social media and
Mhm.
keeping up with the algorithms. And what if your video doesn't get liked in the first like 10 minutes, then no one's ever going to see it. So that's
Mhm.
that's where it kind of the competition or the negotiation happens for me, just because you you put your heart and soul into this, you want it out there, you want to help people, and you really have good intentions, but the things getting picked up are, the TikToks of people just copying other people, and
Yeah.
in my mind, not necessarily being authentic. So that's definitely where there's kind of a disconnect for me, with it. But again, I know that that's such a part of the game. You have to be out there for it. So yeah, it's an interesting thing for sure.
It really is, and you mentioned the influence on young people and the potential negative effects, and I think it takes the authentic people. They need to be there to dilute the potential triggering things, and I love it when I see people out there doing their thing and just being authentic and being normal, and it does make me laugh when people talk about the algorithm, and I just think, you know what, just let's buck the trend, let's just do our own thing. And but if you're just there showing up, doing what it is that you're passionate about and that you believe in, but also as well, something else that occurred to me, just because people don't necessarily like a thing, it doesn't mean that they've not seen it or they've not been affected by it. And I think that's a really interesting thing to bear in mind. But I don't sort of do TikTok, but I've been doing a few experiments to see the difference. And I've had my cat. I put a few videos on of my cat, and he's, oh, they're
That probably blew up.
distance. Oh yeah, he is like the superstar. But
Yeah,
but you mentioned the algorithm, and clearly the algorithm likes cats. So I'm not going to
people love
compete.
cats.
I'm going to compete with a cat. So it's so I think, but that's important to me, that authentic, genuine people with a sound message keep turning up, keep showing up, and are there to influence. I mentioned my earlier one before we press record, my daughters, for example, and all the other daughters out there, because they have to see people like us doing our thing rather than being influenced by the fakery and all of that. And I hope we don't lose that. I hope we don't lose the authentic people, because we're there to dilute all that fakeness. And you can get sucked into the perfectionism of it all, but I am absolutely determined not to. And I think that it just takes people like you to be turning up being yourself. And you need to be getting in front of those young people and talking about the things that you're passionate about, because it's all perfectly logical, makes good sense, and they need to hear the sense amongst all of the nonsense. And there's something on British TV this morning about the young people that have got mobile phones, and they're so young, and it's terrifying. So while they do have phones, they need to see good sound messages rather than the fake stuff that's out there. So yeah.
What a beautiful message that is, though. Like, you just made me think about it so differently. With they do need people like us there. Like, even if we're not getting seen immediately, like the influencers, if you will,
Absolutely.
but we need the realness, the authenticity that we bring for young and old alike, to see that that does still exist and that it
Absolutely.
should be put out there.
And remember, one of the earlier questions I asked you, who were your inspiration and role models? There's young people out there that are being influenced by many people who are not necessarily positive role models. But with you being out there with this message, you just don't know who you're influencing, and you don't know who's taking on what your message. So, and I think people forget that, and that's one of the things that I do as a coach when people are afraid of being judged. And I say to them, but what if you're being judged positively? And that always stops them in their tracks. They never stop to think that someone could be thinking well of them, that they could be thinking, I wish I was doing that. I love what she's doing. They always jump to the wrong conclusion and think that they're being judged badly, but in fact, they could be being judged in a positive way. So I will be flying that flag for as much as I can, because I think it's so important to have, good, authentic content regularly out there on the social media platforms, because if we don't, AI is going to take over.
Oh yeah. So.
Definitely. So where can we find out more about you online, more about you and the moderation?
Yes, so my website is shameover.me. So pretty much everything's on there, from links to the podcast to the Lose the Hangover Bootcamp, which is basically 30 days to 5 minutes a day. You're figuring out kind of what your triggers are, why you are the way you are, so you can start moving forward in a healthier way. For me, it's just really about transforming your relationship with alcohol, so you can still drink if you choose to. We do have a membership as well that's women only, where we get together every week virtually, and then we're able to chat throughout the week as well. So all of that is shameover.me, and I do have a special coupon code. If you do leader 10, thanks to you, you'll get 10% off any product. So figured I'd include that there just as a thank you to the listeners.
That's wonderful. I will put that code on your website in the show notes for this podcast. So leader 10, those will go notes. Thank you so much. It's been absolutely fascinating. I love talking to people like you, because I get so absorbed in what you say and I forget we're recording.
Me too. I love it. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I've loved every second of it. Thank you for listening to the Communicate with Confidence podcast today, and special thanks to my lovely guest, Erica Mallery. Join me on the next episode for more tips, tricks and insights. You can follow me on Instagram at Coach Amanda Jane, or visit my website amandajane.co.uk. Bye for now.